What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. If you can see behind me, my wife decided to take down the Valentine's Day stuff and put up the Easter stuff. So, getting ready for Easter. I guess if you celebrate, today is the start of Lent, I guess, or Ash Wednesday. I'm not 100% sure how that works. I didn't grow up celebrating those holidays, but if you do, hopefully you don't give up something that's going to drive you nuts for the next 40 days and nights. But we have a slate here today. I'll barely call it a slate. It's an interesting one. 5 games, 5-10-5 so far this week. I don't know. Like some of these slates where you're like, oh man, this slate's terrible, I end up liking, and vice versa. Last night was a bit of a as I say, for me, a tax write-off. That rabbit looks rabid. Yeah. Bacon kind of had a meeting with that rabbit before we hung it up, but I honestly didn't. I liked my lineup. I had Columbus 2 with Werenski, and then Colorado, parts of Colorado 1. I had Joey Decord, who went negative again, but like Werenski scored twice. Ken Johnson on a shorthand, and that says Colorado really didn't do too much, so my night was over. I didn't even look until this morning. I looked at the Colorado box score, didn't even log in. But joining me to break down this lovely slate, Slim Cliffy, what's going on?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Yeah, you really needed Tampa Bay last night. I was looking at the leaderboard. There's a lot of Nikita Kucherov and Victor Hedman and things like that amongst the top lineups. I had Colorado as well. I went full Colorado 1 with Makar, and then I paired them with Kotkaniemi and Jackson Blake. I would have been fine if I would have just used Stahl and Martinook instead. That's kind of the frustrating part, is like I feel fine about the lineup. I was just picked the wrong filler stack from Carolina. Basically like 50-50, and I flipped the coin wrong. Like that's just how that goes. But we have 5 games here tonight. A couple what might be lopsided matchups, but considering how the teams in those games are playing, I'm talking about Ottawa and Chicago, Anaheim and Vancouver. Anaheim 6 goals at 5-on-5 last night going into Edmonton. It was the first time since October of 2019 that Anaheim has scored 6 goals at 5-on-5 in a regular season game. It was something like 416 games. Edmonton Oilers, baby. Always setting records. They're going into Vancouver. Like, Anaheim's not looked that bad, honestly. Vancouver's, I don't recall them ever looking good this season, even though they're still near a playoff spot. But yeah, that's why I think it's kind of a bit more wide open. But we'll go through them one by one. Each game is interesting. There's something to play in every game. Like sometimes even on 5-game slates, there'll be a game where I'm like, pass. I think there's something to like in every single one of those games.
Yep. And I see Kurt in chat, and I'm going to attempt that last name. I could barely say NHL players' last names. I almost said Kazakhstan, but that's a country and not your last name. Appreciate all of your insight. Took down the 222 on DK 2 of the last 4 nights. Hopefully you make it 3 out of 5. There is a 67-man 222 tonight, 3K to first. Congrats to you. I don't know if on your StreamYard, I say scenes a lot, but there's a scenes thing in beta on the left side of the screen that's driving me nuts. So I'm going to come off the StreamYard, go into the tools here. Let's get into the slate again, but before we do, just wanted to extend a thank you for tuning in. It's a 5-game slate on a Wednesday afternoon. There's almost 200 of you watching between YouTube and Twitter. We appreciate that. If you do want to go premium for DFS, click that top link, the Stochastic one. You can use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off any subscription, weekly or monthly, of your first subscription. Now, there is a good golf tournament starting tomorrow. Like, there's a good swing of golf starting. So if you're interested in the PGA sims, projections, all that, click that link. I am playing PGA tomorrow. If you're interested in the sports betting side of all those shenanigans, the guys at OddsShopper have been killing it, like legitimately killing it. Greg Ehrenberg has been doing that $100 bankroll challenge. He started at $100 at the end of NBA season. He's almost 10x'd his bankroll. Click that bottom link, OddsShopper. You can get portfolio EV. You can get all the bets. You get into another Discord, all of that jazz. Now, let's get into this slate. Washington Capitals with a 3 total heading into Madison Square Garden. The Rangers have a 2.9. Rangers going Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Zibanejad, Miller, Cooley, Othman, Brzezinski, Juuso, Parssinen. I don't know why I mentioned that, but they are under 10K. Washington going Ovechkin, Strome, Protas, Wilson, Dubois, McMichael, Mangiapane, Eller, Frank. This feels like I know every game on a short slate is important, but this one feels a little bit more important than the other ones, just because there's a lot of ownership on it, and there's a lot of ways you can go about this. And I'm very uncomfortable with most of these options. I'll start on the Rangers side, since I'm a Rangers fan, and we're just going to start there. I'll start with the Zibanejad, Miller, Cooley line. Like, the Rangers don't really hard match. So they're going to see, the top 6 will see top 6. They'll see some Ovechkin. They'll see some Dubois. Like, Dubois, Wilson, McMichael haven't been that great defensively. Dubois with Protas has been very good, but Protas is with Ovechkin here. So these top 2 lines for Washington aren't great defensively, but if it is Logan Thompson in net, he's arguably been one of the 2 best goalies in the league. And another problem with the Miller line is they are not creating a bunch. 2.3 expected goals for per 60, 5.7 actual, because JT Miller, since coming to the Rangers, has been shooting 35%. That's not sustainable. I think he's a career 11%, somewhere around there. I forget. I looked up the stat this morning, but it is way lower than 35%, honestly. And they're coming in at 12.9% projected. Like, if you want to chase that, I guess it's fine, because Cooley and Zibanejad, Zibanejad has looked so much better on the wing than he was a top line center with Kreider. The issue is just JT Miller shooting the lights out right now, but Cooley does create a bunch. I don't mind that line just because it's 15-8, but expecting a goal every night from JT Miller is just not it. The shooting percentage is going to come crashing down. Maybe when it comes crashing down, Mika's is going to go up. I don't know. It does feel a bit chasey, but at 12.9% on a 5-game slate, I think it's fine. Obviously, Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere also play heavy minutes. They've been good all season. They'll see the same lines that the Miller line sees. They are coming in at 17.5% though. And I don't want to say it's chalk, but I don't particularly want to play heavily owned Rangers against Logan Thompson if it is Thompson, because we've seen, the Rangers just go through these lulls where they just don't do anything.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. I think it's going to be Charlie Lindgren. And the only reason I say that is it's been 14 games since Lindgren came back from injury. In those 14 games, Thompson's played 8, Lindgren's played 6, and Thompson has not played more than 2 in a row.
Yeah.
And he started the last 2 games. One was, I think both were losses too. Yeah. Or no, one was a shootout win, the other was a loss. So
there you go.
Yeah, so, I think it's going to be Lindgren.
Yeah, the fact that they haven't confirmed Thompson makes me think it's going to be Lindgren as well. That does give me some more interest in the Rangers, but again, these ownership percentages are a bit high, considering that Washington has a decent penalty kill, and sometimes the Rangers are power play merchants. I think they're fine. I just want to err on the side of caution at that ownership. On the Washington side, it's a little bit more interesting. There's a little bit less ownership on the Dubois, Wilson, McMichael line than the other Rangers lines. The Ovechkin, Strome, Protas is the highest projected owned line in this game at 18%. However, the JT Miller line, not shockingly, has not been good defensively. 2.8 expected goals against per 60. 0 actual because Igor has been Igoring, which is an issue of stacking Washington. So at 18%, I think I would go to Wilson, Dubois, McMichael. They have been very, very good in a large sample this season. Dubois, he's on pace, I think, for 70 points this season. He's having a great season. You get McMichael and Wilson on the top power play unit. Rangers penalty kill is as good as Igor is. You know what I mean? If he's on, he's going to be tough to beat. But the one spot, if Igor's on, that you can beat him on is the power play. I think of all the lines in this game, I think for me, it would be Dubois, Wilson, McMichael, and then JT Miller, Zibanejad, Cooley. If you want to get the more expensive lines for higher ownership, I think that's fine. But for me personally, I'm going to go to the lower owned, cheaper lines.
Yeah, I'll start on the Rangers side. I do think this is a game where I do think there's a bunch of playable lines. And listen, the Caps, obviously, through the first half of the season, one of the best teams in the league. They've been kind of on a slide of late, if you want to call it that. I was just kind of looking through their last 15 games. The last 15 games, which coincides basically with Lindgren returning from injury, it's 3.1 goals against per 60 minutes. It's 19th in the league. What made the Capitals so good earlier in the season was just how insane their goaltending was, right? Excuse me. Through their first I was looking through the first 47 games of the season, lowest goals against in the league. Last 15 games, they've dropped basically to 19th. And the thing with having the lowest goals against in the league is their expected goals against was 24th. The goaltending carried them. They PDO'd their brains out, high shooting percentage, high save percentage. I think two things could be true with the Caps. A, they were a pretty good team, but B, they were riding a really hot streak. And we saw Vancouver do that last year. Vancouver set the single season record for 5-on-5 shooting percentage in the modern era. They got bounced in the second round of the playoffs and weren't very good through the final 20 games of the season. I don't mind the Caps here. A big reason I don't mind the Caps is no Adam Fox for the Rangers. And listen, the Rangers surprisingly have looked good in the few games that they played without Fox. I would say that their last two games have been against Nashville and the New York Islanders. So little bit of a difference here tonight. And I think that eventually it's going to catch up with them, because if you look at the defensive numbers for the lines, all of them are pretty bad when Adam Fox hasn't been on the ice this season. So I still do like the Washington side here. I agree with Wilson, Dubois, and McMichael. What I might do is even 4-man stack and just add in Ovechkin. The thing is he's been leading them in ice time since they got back from the Four Nations, so I don't want to leave him off. Obviously, he plays with the empty net situations. He plays both halves of the power play, all that stuff. I might just do Washington 2 plus Ovechkin or something like that. I do think that this is a pretty good spot for the Caps, because I'm not worried about any of the Rangers matchups. At best, their best defensive line is league average, and I think it's probably going to be worse once you get a bigger sample with Adam Fox not in the lineup. So I really do like Wilson, Dubois, McMichael. They're getting reasonable ice time, 16 minutes at the low end, 19 minutes at the high end. You get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. McMichael was on a slide basically from Christmas until the Four Nations break, and now he's got 18 shots in 6 games since he came back. He's looked a bit different. as a player. I really do like Washington 2 here tonight, but I would be hesitant to make a Washington stack without Ovechkin. I will also shout out Washington 3. I'll only shout them out because there are a couple very expensive lines here tonight. Maybe you're looking for a cheap third line stack or something. Eller and Frank have been really, really good together. 165 minutes, 2.6 expected goals, 2.6 actual. That's above average, and being above average offensively for a third line is pretty good. They don't get much ice time. You kind of need to get a little bit lucky, but you play just about any third line, you're going to need to get lucky, but at least they've been good in their minutes. So, Eller and Frank and Mangiapane, something like that, I think you can pair with Toronto or Ottawa or whatever. On the Rangers side, listen, man, Zibanejad and Miller haven't been they've been good together, but they've been good together because they're shooting 25% when they're on the ice. We can go over example after example why even half that rate is probably too high. But Zibanejad and Cooley have generally played pretty well together this season, regardless of who's on a line with them. 15,800 feels a little expensive for a line with Will Cooley, but Zibanejad playing upwards of 20 minutes, Miller around 18. Even Cooley's playing like 16 to 17 minutes lately, right?
They trust
I think a lot of it is because they don't really trust the bottom six, so they're just playing the top six a lot. But Zibanejad and Cooley have been good together. Zibanejad and Miller are on the top power play unit. Washington's penalty kill has been on a bit of a decline basically since Christmas. It's kind of been in lockstep with the team. So I don't mind Zibanejad, Miller, Cooley here. I think I kind of prefer them over the top line, considering you get a $1,500 savings and they're coming in with lower ownership. So I think in this game, it's both second lines for me. But if I'm playing the Caps, I find it pretty hard to leave Ovechkin off my stack.
Yeah, Cooley, he's a high energy player. He played 18 minutes last game. He also penalty kills. And it's Cliffy's point is they just do not trust the bottom six. And it's the same thing with the defensemen. They're rolling they're rolling all the pairs. The only player above 20 minutes is Keandre Miller. So there's going to be times where you're going to have good matchups for Washington. So yeah, both sides of this game, very interesting. Let's get to the other early game. The last three games of the slate are very late in the evening. The Ottawa Senators with a 3.4 total heading into Chicago. The Blackhawks have a 2.5 total. This is a circus. Ottawa going Kachuk, Stützle, Giroux, Batherson, Norris, Perron, Pinto, It's-a-me, Amadio, and Ridley Greek. Chicago going players. Well, Donato, Teravainen, Mikheyev. They've actually been decent. Bedard, Nazard, Colton Dock. There's your answer for Bedard. Colton Dock. Bertuzzi, Anthony Ciu, Landon Slaggert. Well, I'll start on the Chicago side. Again, the only line I have interest in is Donato, Teravainen, Mikheyev. It's a very small sample, but they've been decent. It's a 5-game slate. So, I'm not just going to be I'm out on Chicago as much as I want to be. I would consider Donato, Teravainen, and Mikheyev the more lineups I'm making because they're 13-4. They are coming in double their top two stack at 9% projected, but if you look at the lines 13-5 and under, it's an ugly sight. So I don't mind them. Do I really like this line? No. Is Ottawa a decent defensive team? Yes. Do the Blackhawks suck? Absolutely. But for 13,400, Donato and Teravainen have played well together this season, so that's fine. Bedard, Nazar, Doc at 13-1. Bedard and Nazar have played 115 minutes together this season. 2.5 expected goals for. 38% Corsi percentage. They're getting run over. So, it would only be Donato, Teravainen, Mikheyev if you want to one-off Bedard because he can do some Bedard-like things anytime. Fine, but it is only that Donato line. The Ottawa side is more interesting because you have to kind of make a choice here because Kachuk, Stützle, Giroux is 21,800, and outside of the Leafs top line, I believe they're the most expensive line on the slate. 30.9% top two stack, 11.1% projected ownership. Huge positive leverage here. Highest total on the slate. Brady Tkachuk, per the Stochastics projections, has the highest projection on the night, higher than Austin Matthews. Here's the thing. They're not creating anything in 140 minutes. Like, I don't understand what's going on with this line because last year they were really, really good. 2.4 expected goals for, 1.7 actual. The cure for all ails could be the Bedard line here. They won't see much of it because, they send out that Donato line for the most part against top comp. That Bedard line or that Donato line in a small sample, worse than league average, but way better than the Donato or way better than the Bedard line. That Bedard line for expected goals against per 60, Donato, Teravainen, McKay of 2.6. Listen, there's no matchup concerns. There's bad and then there's awful. Donato line's bad. The Bedard line's awful. If they get any matchups against the Bedard line, they will run them over. I don't like if this was a 10-game slate, I'd be out on Ottawa 1. But because this is a 5-game slate and the Hawks are an embarrassing organization, like I think I'm going to consider them. I don't want to full stack them. I think a Brady Tkachuk one-off makes a lot of sense here. Or I would go Norris Batherson, leave off Perron, add in Tkachuk. You get a full power play stack. The Chicago penalty kill has been sliding. There's no Seth Jones. They have guys like Ethan Del Mastro, who you didn't even know played in the NHL until Tuesday. You know what I mean? So, like, I think I would do some sort of power play stack instead of just straight stacking Ottawa 1. They just have not been great for whatever reason. Not that Ottawa 2 is anything special, but I think I'd do some sort of power play stack. I'm not thrilled about Ottawa here by any means, if you couldn't figure that out. But it's a 5-game slate, and the Blackhawks suck.
Yeah, I'll start with the Ottawa side. Obviously, they're the most interesting side. They do have the 3.6 team total. Just want to highlight that since Christmas, 26 games played, they're at 1.4 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That is absolutely abysmal. Like that's honestly like 2015 Buffalo Sabres type stuff. Yes. If you look at the full season, it's a little bit better, but still 1.9 goals per 60 minutes. Now, to some extent, there's always some bad luck going on here, but I think I don't want to go too long on this, but I think this is kind of what's happening is this was a team that played a fair bit counterattack style last year, like try to turn over pucks in the neutral zone, try to turn over pucks with good defensive pressure and get 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s and things like that. They don't do that this year. Last year, they were, I think, 6th in the league in shots off the rush per 60 minutes. This year, they're 19th. I don't want to say they completely abandoned playing off the rush, but they're doing it at a much, much, much lower rate than last year. The other thing is one of the best indicators for high shooting percentages from a team or a player is high danger passes at 5-on-5. I think Ottawa has the 4th fewest in the league. They're down there with like Nashville and Chicago. It's pretty bad. So you have a combination of a team that's abandoned playing off the rush and also doesn't create high percentage shots for themselves. And that's why you're getting the shooting percentages that you're getting. Like, again, there's some bad luck there, but just chalking it all up to bad luck isn't enough. Like, this is a team that's changed how they played, and it's made them better defensively, but it's also made them a lot worse offensively. So that's what matters to us for DFS. Now, with all that said, this is the Chicago Blackhawks. You know what I mean? Like, this team is bad. Even as Chicago's been somewhat better of late, the last 5 weeks of NHL action, 5th most goals against per minute in the league, 5th most goals against at 5-on-5, fifth most goals against per minute in all situations in the league. This is still a very bad team. Now, I don't really have an issue playing Ottawa per se at 21,800. Here's the thing is that I know that Toronto's in a tougher matchup going into Vegas. I would probably rather just pay the extra $1,000 and go play Toronto. That is for two reasons. One, that Toronto top power play is as good or better than Ottawa's has been this year. And Ottawa are power play merchants of all power play merchants, just this side of Detroit. And the other is that Toronto top line's actually been good offensively at 5-on-5, where this Ottawa top line just has not. And almost every iteration of Ottawa's lines have not been good offensively at 5-on-5. It's one of those things I would rather bet on the better team, the better offensive line in the worst matchup. That's just kind of the way that I look at it. So I think if anything, I agree with the Ottawa power play stack. And the reason I agree with that is over the last 5 weeks, Chicago 2.9 times shorthanded per game. I believe it's fourth most in the league over that stretch, sixth most in the league over that stretch. If you go all the way back to Christmas, again, sixth most power play opportunities given to the opponent per game. So, and Ottawa's drawing the most power plays. So Ottawa could very well get 3, 4, 5 power plays here tonight. And if that happens, they can go 2 for 4, 2 for 5 because their power play is good. Chicago's penalty kill is fine. But when you take that many penalties, it's a problem. So that's why if I do stack Ottawa, I think it's a power play stack. I don't have interest in the depth. I don't have interest in their even strength lines. It would be just straight up stacking the power play. On the Chicago side, I kind of agree with that Donato, Teravainen, and Mikheyev line. Like even I was looking at a different sample than you were. Teravainen and Donato played 110 minutes with any center but Connor Bedard. 3 expected goals, 3.4 actual goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. And Teravainen and Donato are both on the top power play unit. Now, we've said it over and over. Chicago's power play is worse without Seth Jones. I don't imagine it's going to be worth a whole lot over the final 6 weeks of the season, but top power play time is still top power play time. That would be the line that I would play. I think there's something with Bedard and Nazar. Like they both have extremely high zone entry rates. They both love carrying the puck in the zone. That gives them the opportunity to set up high danger passes and things like that. I think there's something there. I also think that they're just going to get ran over most nights. And if I can get a line at a similar price that has 2 guys on the top power play versus 1, I would take that. So for me, it's Donato, Teravainen, and Mikheyev that I think I honestly have the most interest in this game. If I play Ottawa, it's the top power play unit. But again, I really worry about their ability to generate anything at even strength or 5-on-5. You're basically relying on the power play and empty net situations to get there.
Yeah, and just to hammer home the point about how bad the Sens are 5-on-5, this is a stat you sent me Tuesday morning because they played the Washington Capitals on Monday night. That game was 4-4 that went to a shootout. The Sens were outshot 15-0 with Brady on the ice at 5-on-5 in that game. 15-0 in a game that had 8 goals. You know, the Hawks are obviously way worse than the Capitals. Capitals are the Vezina Trophy favorites right now, but like couldn't get one. Anyway, Toronto Maple Leafs with a 2.9 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.2 total. Toronto going Matthews, Marner, Nyes, Nylander, Tavares, Holmberg, McMahon, Domi, Robertson. I'll just send the warning up now. Cliff, you said how many times you're going to get burned by Toronto 3. I just wanted to remind you that you get burned by Toronto 3, just in case you had any inkling of playing them here tonight. Vegas going Eichel, Stone, Tanner Pearson. The Tanner Pearson experiment has rejoined us. I'll just remind you who Tanner Pearson was. He was on that 70s line with Jeff Carter on the Kings. Hurdle, Dorofeyev, Brandon Saad, who's 712 years old. Barbashev, Howden, Kolesar is the third line, and Victor Olofsson down on the fourth line. There is a lot of ownership on Vegas here, And like, I get it because it's a 5-game slate. It's around the ownership of the Capitals and Rangers here tonight. The Leafs have not been good defensively. They've really been bailed out by their goaltending this season. Like, Stolarz has been great. You saw them kind of get exposed when Woll had to play every day because Stolarz was out. There were some bad games there. Stolarz is probably starting here tonight. But again, like, this Toronto team is not good defensively. The problem that I'm having with Vegas 1 is Tanner Pearson. They're 16-5, and they're coming in with 18% projected ownership. And Tanner Pearson's 2,800. If they're down in this game, like, Victor Olofsson's moving up, Ivan Barbashev's moving up, I have no faith in Tanner Pearson sticking there. And again, like, Eichel and Stone this season in a large sample haven't been great creating a ton. And there's no way that Tanner Pearson's going to help with creating expected goals at this point. You know what I mean? If you want to go 2-man Eichel Stone, like, that's fine. But I think I prefer the second line of Hertl, Dorofeyev, and Saad. Listen, Saad's not the player he was 5 years ago, and neither was Tanner Pearson, but I still think Brandon Saad has more left in the tank offensively than Tanner Pearson does. They're 15-5. They're coming in at 15% ownership. You still get 2 guys on the top power play. They've actually been decent at both ends of the ice at 5-on-5. They're going to get probably middle 6 matchups. Like, that second line with Holmberg there has been decent defensively, but that any Domi line really hasn't been great defensively. So I kind of prefer Hertl, Dorofeyev, Saad here. If you want to go Eichel, Stone, and add in Dorofeyev because the Leafs penalty kill isn't great, I think that is viable as well. I do worry about the Vegas power play without Theodore, but Dorofeyev would be the guy I'd put in there. But for me, if I'm full stacking even strength line, it would be that second line. On the Toronto side, the second line of Nylander, Tavares, Holmberg, like, Holmberg helps that line defensively. He makes them worse offensively. So as a full stack on that line, I'm out. Like, obviously, if you want to one-off Nylander, that's fine. The line that interests me the most on the Toronto side is the top line. And yes, they're $1,500 more than Ottawa 1. But Ottawa 1 is creating 2.4 goals per 60 minutes and 1.7 actual. For another $1,500, you can get 3.3 expected goals per 60 and 4 actual. Yes, Nyes' price is still ridiculous. He came down $300, but that line has actually been good. So I agree with Cliffy. I prefer Toronto 1 to Ottawa 1. Am I going to play either of them in single entry as a full stack? I don't know. Like, I haven't built yet. Like, if you ask me to choose right now, I'd lean towards no. But again, I'd rather play Toronto than Ottawa. If I was making 20 lineups, I definitely have more Toronto 1 than Ottawa 1. I do worry a little bit about Matthews' health, but like, from a macro perspective on a 5-game DFS slate, who cares? You know what I mean? He's playing, so you play him. So for me, it would be Toronto 1 and Vegas 2 or some sort of Vegas power play stack.
Yeah. I'll start on the Vegas side. I'm with you. I don't have any faith in Tanner Pearson. Like, listen, Stanley Cups, he's had a long career, made millions of dollars. He's had a very, very good NHL career. This guy was not good enough to stick on in the Montreal bottom 6. Like, that, the reason why he's in Vegas is because they could sign him for the league minimum. Like, that's just kind of what it is. I do think Barbashev moves up, Brett Howden moves up. Somebody, unless Vegas is up like 4-0 after the first period or something, I do think that Pearson's not long for that line. I'm with you. I'm interested in Hertl, Dorofeyev, and Saad, and this is why. I agree that Saad isn't the player that he was 4 or 5 years ago, but one thing that he was really good with right up until he got traded by St. Louis was in transition, was like carrying the puck out of the zone, carrying the puck in the zone, setting up the offense, like those types of things. Like, his shot, his playmaking and all that, not great. you can let Hurdle and Dorofeev do all that. The problem is like Hurdle and Dorofeev aren't great on the things that Saad is good at. They're not great on zone entries. Saad is. I think that he's the type of player that can help that line, even if he doesn't turn into a big producer. And that's why I kind of like Hurdle and Dorofeev. I mean, you get Hurdle and Dorofeev on the top power play as well. Saad's 4,100, which I do think is overpriced considering what he's done this year. But it's also at a price where, like, if he gets an assist and 3 shots, like, it's okay. Like, you're not mad about it, So I do like Vegas 2 here. Pavel Dorofeev's had a pretty underrated and pretty good season. He's over his last 20 games. He's over 3 shots per game, which is, I think, fairly notable. He's on pace for a 30-goal season. Like, honestly, one of the quieter 30-goal seasons that you're going to see in the NHL this year. Thomas Hurdle is not far behind either. I really do like that Vegas 2 here. Like, if you want to make it a power play stack, I think that's fine. I'm not that concerned about the power play with Hanifin instead of Theodore or something like that. Like, Hanifin was pretty good on the power play to finish the year last year. If you look at the shots with Hanifin and with Theodore on the power play, like, they're fairly similar. So considering that the Leafs don't really have that good of a penalty kill, I don't mind like leaving off Saad and putting on Eichel or putting on Stone or something like that. But it's Vegas 2 that I really do have interest in. Also, shout out Vegas 3. Like, Howden and Kolasar have at least played pretty well together this season, carrying the shot attempt share, carrying the expected goal share, 3.1 actual goals per 60 minutes. Matched up against those third, fourth lines from the Leafs, which aren't very good defensively, I think matches up pretty well for Vegas 3. Like, if you're playing Ottawa, an Ottawa power play stack, you need a couple cheap forwards or something, I think Vegas 3 is where I would look. But it's Vegas 2 that I like the best on their side. On the Toronto side, like, I agree, it's the top line, right? I'm not playing a $19,000 Pontus Holmberg line. Like, that's just I know he has something like, is it like 4 goals in his last 6 games, and those 4 goals have come on 9 shots.
I'd rather play Tanner Pearson.
That's pretty bold. And I do think that this is a bad matchup for the Toronto depth. So it's kind of like process of elimination. It would be Toronto 1. Like, for all their faults, Toronto won 4.8 goals per 60 since January 1st. Like, a really high shooting percentage, but like, Marner's getting over 22 minutes a game since the 4 Nations break. Matthews is over 20 minutes. Even Nyes is around 18. Nyes is still overpriced at 6,300. He should probably be like $1,500 cheaper, but it is what it is. It's kind of like by process of elimination, I like Toronto 1 here, but I think in general, I just like the Vegas side better.
Yeah, and I was looking while you were talking. It looks like Joel Woll is going to be starting here for Toronto tonight. Stellaris has been better. Any way you want to slice it.
Yeah. I mean, neither's been terrible. So it's not like, this isn't a Dustin Wolf to Dan Vladar or I was going to, slander Jonas Johansson, but then look what happened last night.
Like I said, tax write-off. We don't talk about those. That hurt. Anyway, Anaheim Ducks with a 2.3 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 3.2. This game is an absolute mess because, 1, Vancouver has new lines. 2, looks like Quinn Hughes is going to be out. And we've talked about.
I don't know if you saw, but they confirmed that. Well, after we jumped on, it was like 20 minutes ago. They confirmed he's not playing tonight.
So, like, here's the thing. Like, we've talked about it before. Vancouver without Quinn Hughes just gets destroyed offensively. Defensively, whatever. But offensively, it is a dramatic drop-off. He is arguably the best defenseman in the world when he's healthy. So going from Quinn Hughes to, Tyler Myers is a nice player, but like, hello. Also, did you see the Vancouver Beats saying that JT Miller has more goals with the Rangers than Elias Pettersson does have shots
since the trade?
Yeah.
Not great.
Yeah. Anyway, new lines for Vancouver. Let's touch on them because they are playing the Ducks, who are back-to-back on the road. They are Pettersson, Garland, Joshua, Hedel, Drew O'Connor, Lekaramaki, Besser, DeBrusk, Suter. Like, I like Connor Garland. It feels like punishment being stuck with Elias Pettersson. I don't like, he has to be hurt. Like, we've talked about it all season. There is something wrong. I don't want to, I'm not into the speculation as I speculate, but I don't know. I don't have interest in that line. They're just not it. And again, no Quinn Hughes. So it's like, who is moving them the puck? Like, Hronek's fine. Myers is fine. Pettersson's fine. Quinn Hughes was amazing. So it's like dropping from elite to okay is a problem. And like, there is a lot of ownership on Hedel, O'Connor, Lekaramaki because they are 12,100 and you get Hedel and Lekaramaki on the top power play unit. Lekaramaki's min price on the top power play unit. Like, there's going to be ownership on him regardless of whether I want to play them or not, or whether I slander this line or not. I think, like, obviously, if you're playing the Leafs or you need a salary saving, Lekaramaki at min price on the top power play unit is fine. I don't know if I want to full stack this line at near 12% without Quinn Hughes. Like, we talked about it when it was like Miller, Besser, X, and they were like 12.5 before dynamic pricing. Without Quinn Hughes, like, their offense just fell off a cliff. I don't know. Like, Karamaki one-off is fine. A Hedel one-off, sure. You want to play, like, I don't really want to play Besser, DeBrusk, Suter either because they're 14-6. At that point, I'll just spend the extra couple bucks to go play the Rangers JT Miller line, the Vegas second line, you know what I mean? So the only line I have interest in is Van 2, but the ownership without Quinn Hughes is insane. The only thing drawing me to it is because Lekaramaki is min price on the top power play unit. So I think, from a one-off perspective, that's fine. On the Ducks side, in a nutshell, I would have interest in Vetrano Terry Strome. However, they are egregiously priced to $18,200 here tonight. That's insane. Like, you could play Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere at home with a total 25% higher for $900 less. Like, they're fine, but the price is not. So I think for me, I would drop down to Carlson, Zegras, Killorn. They're fine as a filler. Like, again, if you want to go filter the lines on the stochastic top stacks, 14K and under, it is a mess. I think McTavish, Gauthier, two-man is fine. I don't particularly love the Ducks. I don't particularly love the Canucks. But, again, Lekaramaki, min-price, top power play. That's the only thing that really gives me interest.
Yeah, I'll start with Anaheim. Like, quickly, like, Vetrano Terry Strome, like you said, in a nutshell, I think it's okay. As the third most expensive line on the board, like, I think that's a little bit much. We'll get to the Kings in a second. Like you said, you can play Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere for less. You can play the Washington top line for less. You can play the Vegas top line for less. Obviously, that Anaheim top line is going to have a fraction of the ownership. So if you're playing, 50 lineups, 100 lineups, the equation's a little bit different. But, we'll get to the Kings in a second. There's a Kings line that's coming in with single-digit ownership that I would rather play at a similar price. So I'm out on them. I feel like McTavish and Colangelo and Cutter Gauthier feels like a line that could be a good like third scoring line, getting like secondary, tertiary matchups and things like that. It also feels like the night to stack them was last night. It's like that Brink Cates Forster thing where they go absolutely nuclear for one game. And it's like, well, maybe I should play them. And it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't. So for that reason, I kind of agree with you on the Carlson, Zegras, Killorn line. Like, they've been genuinely good this year. 58 shot attempts, 2.7 goals per 60 minutes. Zegras, 25 shots in his last 10 games. Remember, he was suspended for 3. He leads them in ice time since the Four Nations break. So I don't mind Zegras, Killorn, and Carlson. Like, the biggest problem for Leo Carlson was shooting percentage. That's starting to come around a little bit. And, like, for all of Trevor Zegras' issues over the last couple of years, I was looking at his assist rate. His assist rate is, like, the 90th percentile of the league over the last 2 seasons. And think of all the injuries and how bad that this Anaheim team has generally been. So at 14K, I think they're playable. As you mentioned, like down in that price range, there's not a whole lot. I'm going to be honest. There's a couple lines in the next game that we'll talk about that I think I would rather play. I think they're fine. I'm not super stoked on playing Anaheim, generally speaking, tonight. But if anything, it'd be the Zegras line. On the Vancouver side, I'm out on Elias Pettersson. Elias Pettersson, 27 shots on goal in his last 20 games. That is absolutely insane. That's that's stuff that you see from like a Pittsburgh Penguins third liner.
I think Matt Rempe has more.
That's bad. So I'm out on the Pettersson-Garland line. For me, it's Drew O'Connor and Philip Hedl that are interesting because they have actually been really, really, really good together. It's not obviously not a big sample because Hedl and O'Connor haven't been there that long, but 65 minutes together, 70 shot attempts for, 47 against per 60 minutes, 3.5 expected goals for, 2.3 against. Like they've been fairly dominant. And, no Quinn Hughes obviously sucks. Anaheim's still not a very good team. And at least it's not like that it was without Quinn Hughes 3 months ago. Like adding Marcus Pettersson does help. It's not that he can replace Quinn Hughes. It's just that he can replace somebody worse that would have been completely obliterated without Quinn Hughes in the lineup. You know what I mean? So I don't mind that Vancouver Hedl line. Like Lekaramaki, he's a good scoring prospect. He's probably the best offensive prospect that they have. Hedl and Lekaramaki both on the top power play unit, quote, top power play unit. I mean, it's got Tyler Myers running in it. And at 12,100, they're true filler status. Like, yes, they're coming in with a lot of ownership, but if you're pairing them with like Toronto or something like that, there's the combined ownership is going to be pretty low. So I think it's Hedl, O'Connor, Lekaramaki that interests me most in this game. On the Anaheim side, I don't mind the Zegras line, but they're definitely not my favorite 14, 15K line.
I will say, because I watched a lot of Philip Hedl hockey, he doesn't necessarily need elite puck movers to get into the zone. He is very good on his own zone entries. So, might be talking myself into some fill here tonight. St. Louis Blues with a 2.5 total heading into LA. The Kings have a 3 total. Kings lost to the Blackhawks the other night, 5-1 in Chicago. That kind of stuff happens. I mean, it's not even like the Kings played poorly. It was just Spencer Knight was just out of his mind. And also, the Kings at home are a lot better defensively than the Kings on the road because they send out Mikey Anderson, Gavrikov against top comp, not excusing Darcy giving up 5 goals against the Blackhawks, but as we say, could be a little bit of a tax write-off. Kings going Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere, Moore, Fogle, Deneau, Kempe, Kopitar, Turcotte. Blues going Kyrou, Holloway, Shen, Thomas, Buchnevich, Neighbors. Now, Cliffy and I were talking about Turcotte before the show. The dude just does not stay on the top line. They should just move Fogle up at this point. Fogle's the one who's been moving up at this point. If you want to play Kempe, Kopitar and just put Fogle in there, probably a decent bet. He'll probably get at least a period there unless they're winning like 19-0. And even then, Turcotte will play like 12 minutes. So, like, that's fine. You can do whatever you want with Turcotte. Don't mind Kopitar, Kempe, but the 2 lines that I have more interest in are Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere. Like, Byfield, Fiala, Laferriere, cheaper than the Ducks top line at home against the Blues, and they've been just ridiculously good. So I do like them at 18K. If you don't want to spend 18K for that line, I think Deneau, Moore, Fogle is fine. Like, they have been very, very good. The one thing is, like, if they're losing or it's a close game, Fogle is going to take some shifts with Kempe and Kopitar. Not the worst thing in the world. You do lose a little bit of a correlation there. So if you are spending up, it would be Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere. If you need the savings, don't mind more Fogle to know. But again, they're kind of in that Vegas 2, Rangers 2 range where I'd rather play them, but they're also fine. On the Blues side, I don't really want to play Thomas, Buchnevich, Neighbors. One, like, that Kopitar line has been fine defensively. The biggest problem is they're going to go out against the Gavrikov-Mikey Anderson pairing, and that's a problem. So the second line for St. Louis, Kyrou, Holloway, Shen, they're 13-8, coming in at 11% projected. I don't love them because, one, they're going to see Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere, which has been an unbelievable line at both ends of the ice. But, again, 14K and under is a abomination here tonight. They're fully correlated. Darcy Kemper has had some leaky games. The Kings' issues have been penalty kill related. They're fully correlated. So if anything on the blue side, would be Kyrou, Holloway, Shen. But my fair line in this game is Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere.
So I'll just point out these two teams played a couple games ago. It was in St. Louis, but St. Louis beat them 4-1, and they actually had they carried the expected goal share at 5-on-5. Low key, the Kings have not been that great for a while now. I was looking at like the Anderson Gavrikov pairing has still been fine, but their last 20 games together, 2.5 expected goals against per 60, 2.4 actual goals. Like that's about league average. And considering how good they were for like the first 40 games, being around league average for a quarter of the season is not that great. And I don't know if anybody's looked at the numbers for the Joel Edmondson, Drew Doughty pairing, but holy shit, not good. Their defense pairs have been kind of leaky, and I don't think scratching Jordan Spence is going to solve that problem. I think St. Louis is kind of a sneaky spot here tonight, just because, like I said, the Kings over their last 20 games have not been that great defensively. The Doughty or the Anderson Gavrikov pair has generally been pretty good this year, but they've started to slide a bit along with the team. Like I said, Doughty and Edmondson have not been a good pair. That St. Louis Shen Kyrou Holloway line, their power play unit has been solid. Dare I say good. 5-on-5, not as much, but Dylan Holloway, he hit the 20 goal mark recently. He's at 2.7 shots per game over his last 10 games. They're coming in. The problem for me is that they're coming in at 10.9% ownership. So I think for $1,000 more, I would go to Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors, 14,800, 4.1% top two stack, 3% ownership. That's St. Louis top line over the team's last 25 games. 3 expected goals, 4 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5. They've been really, really good at 5-on-5. The problem has been the power play at times. That's kind of the issue for this game. But again, it's only a 5-game slate. There are only so many spots to go. And considering that there's almost no ownership on this line, that has honestly been pretty good for a while now, I'm really interested in Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors. I do think Kyrou, Shen, Holloway makes sense because they've been the better power play unit. So no issue using either of them. But I think it's that Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors line that I have interest in. I will also shout out St. Louis 3, Bolduc, Sundqvist, and Joseph. Going back to Christmas, they're carrying the expected goal share. Zach Bolduc, 10 goals in 52 games or something like that, playing like 11 minutes a game. He's been pretty good for the minimal role. I think they're fine for filler if you're going to Toronto or something. But for me, it's Thomas Buchnevich and Neighbors that I really have interest in on the St. Louis side. On the Kings side, it's Fiala, Byfield, and Laferriere. Trevor Moore, after a really good season last year, he's Trevor Moore once again, which is not shooting for a high percentage. Obviously, Phil Deneau's never been a big goal scorer. Warren Fogle, he has definitely been solid, but he might be up on the top line by the end of the first period. And, Kempe, Kopitar, Turcotte, you said we were talking before the game. 5 out of the last 6 games that line has started together, they've been broken up by the end of the second period. The 6th game was the game that they didn't start together. Kempe was down on a different line. So, like, these guys just don't stay together. So it's Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere, 3.9 goals per 60 minutes, 2.9 expected goals per 60 minutes, 5-on-5. Fiala 74 shots in his last 20 games, like 3.7 shots per game. He's just been dynamite basically since the start, since start of January. That line has come down $3,300 since the last game. I really do like that Fiala line. Fiala, Byfield, Lafayette. They're my favorite line in this game in general, but with Thomas Buchnevich and Neighbors being $3,200 cheaper, I do think they should get some consideration.
Once again, there is no other team in the league that we're on opposite lines on more than the Blues.
It's true.
But, where's Haas when you need him? Let's talk about let's not summon Beetlejuice. But let's talk about defensemen here. Top of the board, 2 Ottawa Senators leading the way above 6K. Chabot at 6,100, Sanderson at 6,500. I know it was an overtime game on Monday, but Sanderson played 31 minutes. That's a lot. I think either are fine. I would lean to, for $400 more, I'm going to play Sanderson probably. I don't mind Chychrun just because he's on the top power play unit. Rangers can be had on the penalty kill. Excuse me. Other than that, in the 5K and up, the next guy down for me would probably be Noah Hannafin. Don't particularly love the top range here. I'd probably be living in the mid range, but what are you seeing?
I mean, the only expensive with Hughes out, the only expensive defensemen are from Ottawa now. Yeah. So, I guess by process of elimination, I like Jake Sanderson more than Chabot, but not really a whole lot for expensive guys. Colton Parayko, I don't like playing Parayko when he's like 5,500 or whatever. 4,600, almost regardless of matchup, I don't mind because he's a guy he can put up a block bonus with 3 shots and you're basically fine, right? So I don't mind Colton Parayko at 4,600. With Hughes out, I imagine Philip Hronik's going to play a ton of minutes here tonight. So Hronik for 4,800. If you want to play Myers instead for a little bit cheaper, I think that's okay. But I have Hronik down. John Carlson running the top power play unit for Washington, I think is in there as well. I still do like Jackson Lacombe even without the top power play time, just because how much is top power play time really worth in Anaheim? But at 5K, I might just drop down a few $100s and go play Colton Parayko instead. I really do like Noah Hannafin as well. Good minutes, good power play, all that stuff against a bad penalty kill from Toronto. So I do like Hannafin. For the cheap guys, they're basically all from 2 teams. You know what I mean? It's you're looking at Connor Murphy or Alex Vlasic or Ethan Del Mastro or someone from Chicago. For the Rangers, you're looking at Braden Schneider, Keandre Miller, Zach Jones for the power play time. Jake McCabe, I think should be given consideration as well, just because he does block shots, and he'll have to play reasonable minutes without Chris Tanev in the lineup. But it's basically the Chicago guys, Connor Murphy, and then Alex Vlasic around the 3,500 4K mark. If you need a punt, Ethan Del Mastro, or the Rangers guys, Zach Jones, Keandre Miller, something like that.
Yeah, if you need even cheaper Rangers punt, you can play Urho Vakanainen at 2,600. He's playing about 18 minutes now. They've been rolling. All their guys are playing 16 to 19, and then Keandre Miller play 21, 22. Let's talk about some goalies here. Not sure we should, but we will. Top of the board. If I'm spending up,
say it.
Igor. I guess it would be for Linus Ullmark, but I don't know, man. Yeah, it'd probably be Ullmark in the top range. I think Igor is fine at 7,900. Again, he can win. He can just take over games. I do worry at some point the blue line without Fox, the dam is going to break. Decent GPP option there. Binnington, if it's Binnington, you just saw, I know Spencer Knight was out of his mind, but the Kings have had trouble scoring for a while now. Arvid Soderblom at 7K. They're I don't know, man. Like, I just don't think with risk of jinxing it, I don't think Ottawa's like a very good offensive team. If they pot 6 tonight, doesn't mean that they're suddenly, elite overnight, but don't mind Soderblom at 7K. Gibson at 7K as well. Vancouver without Quinn Hughes. That's a stab you can take. Like, I don't really love goalie here tonight more than most nights, but it would be like Ullmark, Shesterkin, Bennington, Gibson, Soderblom for me.
Yeah, the two expensive goalies I'm looking at are Ullmark and Lankinen. Sorry, I'm just not playing you versus Shesterkin without Fox in the lineup. That just feels like a five goals on 38 shots type of game.
Almost
Ullmark and Lankinen and Ullmark are 1-2 by stochastic projections. Lankinen a fair bit higher than Ullmark, obviously, facing Anaheim, but I would play Ullmark and then Lankinen. Those are the two expensive goalies I like. The cheaper goalies like Jordan Binnington, I think makes a lot of sense. Like we always say, St. Louis gets into trouble because of their penalty kill. Los Angeles's power play is quite bad. Now, when these two teams played the other night, Los Angeles went 1-for-1 on the power play. So, that sucks. But as long as, the Kings power play doesn't go off, which I don't think it will, I think Binnington's fine. Otherwise, probably Arvid Soderblom at 7K. Again, Ottawa are power play merchants. Chicago's generally had a fine penalty kill. It's another one of those situations where if the penalty kill doesn't get into trouble, it's kind of like Binnington. If the penalty kill doesn't get into trouble, I think he could be just fine because shouldn't get there at 5-on-5.
Yeah. Again, if you have a goal you like, you play them. Just don't play Calvin Pickard. We will be back tomorrow, Friday and Saturday. 9-game slate tomorrow, 6-game slate Friday, 10-game slate. Or there's 10 games on Saturday. I don't know how many are on the main slate. But you get to see our pretty faces for 3 more days this week. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going against your New York Rangers. I'm going with the Heartbreak Kid, Connor McMichael.
I mean, it is WrestleMania season, so I'm going to go Pavel Dorofeyev just because he's quickly becoming one of my guys. I know he's AD's guy, but I sent in the papers for adoption. I just have to haggle the price.
Gotcha.
And going Dorofeyev. Tyler, of course, going a Duck. He's probably going to Josh stack the Ducks here tonight and then complain when he doesn't cash. But we will see everybody tomorrow. Good luck, everybody, and we'll see you in the Discord.
Good luck tonight, everyone.